Studying abroad can feel very intimidating, especially when you don't really know what to expect. So in this video, I'm going to share my honest experience studying Master of Architecture at the University of Melbourne, Australia, covering from the course structure, the studio culture, the workload, and how it compares to Malaysian education system. Hi, hello everyone, Assalamualaikum. It has actually been a year since my last video updates. I've just completed my third semester of my masters with one semester left to go. So I thought this would be a good time for me to give a comprehensive overview of what it's like to be studying architecture here, from the course system, studio lifestyle, and the key differences that I personally noticed compared to Malaysia. So if you have any question while watching, especially if you are planning to study here in Australia, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I will try to reply them as best as I could. Just a quick disclaimer before you start, this video is not about comparing between which education system is better between Malaysia and overseas universities. That is definitely not the point. This is just simply an observation based on my experience having studied both in Malaysia and also Australian education system. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the course content. For Master of Architecture, the total number of subjects that you are going to take is 12 subjects, and it's divided into 3 different categories. For 4 studio subjects, 4 core subjects, and also 4 elective options. So the number of studio that you are going to take is 4 in total, and each studio or semester has its own different theme. So we usually call it Studio C, D, E, and thesis. So Studio C is Care for Countries, Studio D is Design, Studio E is Environmental and Sustainable Focus, and lastly is your thesis. So compared to Malaysian universities where you are going to work on your thesis for 1 year alongside with your final year project, so here your thesis will only be 1 semester and not 1 full year like in Malaysia. So the flow of studio that you can take is, first you have to start with Studio C as a prerequisite, then you can take either Studio D or Studio E first, so either the design studio or environmental studio first interchangeably, and lastly finish with your thesis studio. It is also compulsory for you to take 4 core subjects for you to pass the Master of Architecture, which is first is architecture practice, where you get to learn about contracts and how building is submitted from design proposal to final completion. The second subject is high performance design, where it's focused on building retrofitting and how we can produce a lower embodied carbon building. And the third one is applied architecture technology. This is where in groups you get to design a high-rise tower and produce drawings, technical drawings according to Australian drawing standards. And lastly is history, or we call it as 21st century architecture subjects. The third category of subject is elective, and this is where your study experience in University of Melbourne can get super interesting. There's a lot of options for elective that you can choose at University of Melbourne. For example, if you are interested in robotics, making your own furniture, experimenting with new materials, there's also like BIM focused subject, and you can also jump in between different fields. For example, if you're interested on landscape design or urban planning or policies. So the amount of electives option that you have here is a lot and abundance, and also different by each semester. If you are interested in traveling studio, there's also option for you to travel to Indonesia or Japan, or the one that I've just did is traveling to South Korea to do an urban planning policy study there. So through your elective subject, this is where you really get to expand beyond your traditional architecture and explore different interests or different field. So if you ever wanted to try and venture out to landscape design or urban studies or property studies, through your elective is where you get to put your feet first in those fields. The second thing that we are going to talk about is the studio timeline. So compared to the 14 weeks of Malaysian semester, here we only have 12 weeks of study and exploration, and usually per semester there will be 2 credits. One is concept design and another one is resolve design, or your final credit presentation. And depending on the semester, you will have 1 or 2 research journal or design booklet that you have to submit as a hurdle. So if you didn't submit your design booklet, even though you get an A for your credit or your finals, you will fail your semester because you did not submit your design booklet. Okay, how will the 12 weeks semester being organized? So the first 1 to 5 weeks will be focused on research and exploration. So depending on the studio style and how the studio leader lead their studio, will be doing research, president, and also testing ideas. And then week 6, there will be usually concept design critique, so your first grade. So this is a part where holistically you present what you have learned for the past 5 weeks, the work that you have done, and produce a draft concept or a work in progress design, and so the external panel can give feedback or notes on how you can improve your design leading up to the result design. Week 7 to week 10 is design resolution. It's where you improve from your concept design in terms of planning, circulation, facade design, the material that you're using, and work on technical details. So coming to week 11 and week 12, if your design are on track and in progress, so a studio leader will usually start talking about final drawings and your presentation strategy. So what is the number of drawings that you need to produce? How are you going to present them? What kind of graphic and diagrams is required to represent your projects? So we would call it as like a presentation preparation. And then you will have a SWOT VAC or study week in between. This is the week where you won't have any class or any studio, and you get to finish and cram all of your model making, panel submission, and submit at the end of study week. And your final critique session will usually be held during the first week of exam, so just after the SWOT VAC week or study week. So usually for each grade there will be external panels that will be invited to give their feedback and their opinion, and usually these are people who are working in the industry or firms in Melbourne specifically. And lastly, after your final critique session during week 13, there will be like the final booklet submission, which is usually a hurdle. So all of the work that you have done in terms of research, testing, prototyping, precedent study, the iteration that you have done for your plans, all will be compiled into one design journal, and you have to submit it through online submission. Unlike in Malaysia, the final booklet is super important because it documents your entire research process, iteration, and design development as proof of the work that you have done for the past 12 weeks. So the next interesting thing that we're going to talk about is this self-planned course structure. So here you are not restricted to a fixed cohort or batch. So unlike Malaysia, where if your batch come in like 60% or 100 people, you will stay in the same cohort all throughout your master or your degree. So here you are not restricted to a fixed cohort or batch, and you can plan your subject according to your own schedule. So the academic calendar is divided into mainly 2 different semesters. So semester 1 is from March to June, and semester 2 is from August to November. But there is also an option where you can do summer, winter, and end of year electives to fill up the gaps between those 2 big semesters, or if you want to pace out your semester to be a bit more relaxed and not as packed. So the downside of this is actually there are fewer elective options in the shorter semester, and you might find that the elective that you are very interested in and actually want to do is being offered during semester 1 and semester 2. However, I find that there are still interesting, unique, and challenging subjects that you can take, so it's not as wasted or as uninteresting as you think. The upsides of this is there is also an option for you to take Studio E and Studio D as a summer intensive. So from the normal 12-week semester, you get to compress it into a 6-week intensive studio. This option is great if you're planning to do an internship during the semester or during the year, so you'll need more time. So by putting those studio as an intensive, you get to finish it in advance and have free time during the rest of the year. So another upside of this kind of flexibility in planning your course is you will eventually meet different classmates every semester. So if you're doing a group projects, the people in your class might be already on the final semester or doing the thesis. Some might have just starting their studies for the first semester. So this kind of like different rotation of people is actually great if you take advantage of it to network and expand your social skills. The great flexibility in planning your course means that you can also extend your masters into like 2.5 years or 3 years if you are planning to work part-time in an architecture office. So I can see here that there is not much pressure like in Malaysia to finish a certain degree or a certain master course like directly on time in 4 years or on 2 years, because a lot of people actually took the opportunity to work while they're studying. so they get both working experience and study experience, and there's not much like stigma of extending your master degree. It's such a common thing here. Okay, one thing that I would like to highlight is, as part of the course structure, writing a thesis or a research article is not built into the course structure. So your thesis is only a final year project and you don't have any journal article that you have to publish. However, if you are interested in going to the academia route or want to pursue your PhD, or you want to try to do your own research, there is an option for you to do a short research by taking a research elective. So you'll be assigned to a supervisor who will guide you throughout your research, but it's not as a part of your core subject structure. It's an option. The next thing is studio ballot system. As I've mentioned before, each studio stage, a C, D, E, and thesis offers around 8 to 10 studio options, each with different briefs. So the usual studio will have a maximum of 16 studio with 1 tutor or 2 tutor per studio. And this studio per semester can range from multiple different building typology, from civic building, housing, urban, or theoretical or experimentative studio. And the allocation of studio, unfortunately, is through ballot system. So you have to ballot which one is your preferences from number 1 to number 8, and then the computer will try to assign you to your top 2 or top 3 preferences of studio. Okay, so the process of getting your studio assigned is 1 week before the semester start. There'll be like a studio brief presentation session where studio leaders from each studio that is offered will present their brief, the kind of work that is being produced, and the kind of expectation for each studio. And I would say at the end, usually there will be like a Q&A session where you get to walk up to the studio leader and ask a bit more about the studio objective, what is the expectation, and what is kind of like the material produced at the end of the studio. Through the balloting system, you will rank your preference from number 1 to number 8, and then a few days later, the system will assign you to a studio. Usually they will promise you to get your first or second choice, but from my personal experience, for Studio C, I did get my first choice, but my Studio D, I get my second choice, and then Studio E, I get my third choice. I would say some tips for choosing a studio is first ask for your peers or seniors who have done that studio for feedback. So how is the studio culture? Is the tutorial very helpful? Is the workload manageable or a bit unrealistic? The second thing that you can do is actually look for past student outcomes. So at the end of every semester, there will be MSDX or Melbourne School of Design exhibition. Each studio will pin up their works and you can see the kind of style or production or materials that is being produced for that studio. So looking at the past studio outcomes, you can actually gauge whether you like this kind of design style or not. And the third one is also, it's good to check for the tutor's background and teaching experience. From my observation and experience, the best kind of studio is where the tutors has a lot of teaching experience, so they can like pace and manage the studio and set a realistic expectation on how to meet a deadline in the given period of time. Your experience, whether you have a fun time at University of Melbourne, highly depends on the kind of studio that you choose. So if you get a very disorganized studio or studio that is very poor communication, you'll not feel as happy as being in a studio that is highly engaging, the tutor is highly helpful, and everyone in the studio is highly experienced in producing those kind of works. If you want to have a good time at University of Melbourne, do a good research and choose your studio carefully. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is design style and production culture. After 1.5 years studying here, I can confidently say that style of university actually matters in the kind of work that you produce. As a designer itself, you might have some preference of graphic style compared from one university to another university. Closest comparison that I get is University of Melbourne and also RMIT, because the university is very close by and both are located in near central CBD. University of Melbourne leans heavily toward line drawings, so beautiful architecture line drawings, beautiful section, and not so much on graphic renderings and diagrams. You also can see, if you look at previous work, every university has its own like design DNA or design style, where when you look at a certain exhibition, you kind of know and detect which one is Monash University, which one is University of Melbourne, and which one is from RMIT. So the best tip to know if a certain design studio is actually for you is to try and look for their final year projects online or final year exhibition. Usually there will be some on issues. You can actually find some of Instagram accounts and that where your studio leaders actually post the student works, and you can kind of guess and make a decision between different university, which one actually more aligned to your style and preference. Out of all the 4 semesters, I would say that Studio D level especially allow for a very niche graphic presentation style compared to Studio C and Studio E and also your thesis. The different niche also allow you to go deeper into the topic that you are interested in. For example, some of the studio that I've done has gone very deep into material research and not necessarily like tectonic or facade design. Some focus on the representation and the graphic, so it takes inspiration from old architects with distinct architecture style and drawings, and then try to replicate and implement that as a studio culture or studio DNA. So I guess the good side of this is actually every semester you get to explore different style, different niche, different focus group, and not repeating the same design process every semester. All 3 semesters that I've done before all use like different design methodologies, different principles, and different focus for the studio. This situation actually push you to expand beyond your comfort zone and beyond your design style. Okay, the next thing that we are going to talk about is the tutor and student relationship and what is the studio culture here. All of my past 3 studio, all of my tutors and studio leaders are practicing architects and also registered architects. So they are usually either the director of their own architecture firm or are working full-time in architecture firm in Melbourne. Each week you will be given like 6 mandatory contact hours, and it's either being handled and done like one day as a full 6-hour studio, or it will be divided into 2 different days, so 3 hours and 3 hours studio. I would say as your tutors are usually working in a full-time practice, there will be like a bit of limited long-term mentorship opportunities. The tutors that you've met in one semester does not actually follows you across multiple semesters, and there will be like less advocacy for design competition, leadership roles, and also conference and presentation opportunities. This is one of the huge difference between studying here versus my experience studying in Malaysia. So usually for lectures in Malaysia, there will be like a full-time academic lecturer. So you have the opportunity to meet the same lecturer multiple times over the years you are studying there. So maybe the same lecturer for 1 semester or 2 semesters. So there is a strong sense of mentorship that you get, where they not only see you grow in your studio, they can also advocate you to join more design competition opportunities, more university program, more like academic thesis presentation. So it also allows you to be able to grow a more comprehensive and strong CV to get a job after you graduate. Here at the University of Melbourne, I would say those opportunities still exist, but not through your studio tutor, because their responsibilities is limited to only studio design. If you are interested on design competitions or volunteer program here, you are the one who have to be actively seeking them yourself. So it's self-advocacy rather than recommendation from your tutors, like in Malaysia. Looking back, I would say the 4 years that I have spent studying in Malaysia is one of the best time where I get the opportunity to actually build my CV because of all the program and extracurricular activity that is available in Malaysian university, like architecture festival and design competition. So all of those experience that I have built is, I think, the key factor that has helped me to bring me where I am today. The next important thing is, I think you might be curious on what is the workload studying master in university in Australia compared to like studying in Malaysia. I would say in essence, it's definitely different according to the studio requirement and expectations. So as each studio has their own design brief, the amount of work that you're doing is not as comparable. So some studio naturally have a lot more work to do, and some studio is a bit more laid back. So if I were to generalize, I would say the amount of work here overall is definitely less than in Malaysia in terms of the production, but not necessarily less in design thinking and exploration. So we still put a lot of effort in terms of designing our building and doing our research for our design project. So if you're used to like Malaysian style final step submission, which will usually take up the whole design hall, here is a bit strange on how the grid is being handled. So usually a set of minimalist drawing and diagram is being presented, and we don't put back all of our work during our concept design and research into our final planners. So those research, reading, diagram and design process is not presented during our final grades. It's actually being put in our design journal that we have to submit after our final grade. The drawing requirement is also more intentional with the message that I want to portray as my design narrative. So it's more focused on design narrative rather than the quantity of drawing. So to put it simply, rather than asking for 4 different elevation for the same building, we will have to choose like one angle or elevation that actually explains our design intention and narrative. So only the best elevation, rather than producing 2 or 3 different sections. We'll have to produce like one best section that actually explain the special program narrative and the interior quality. So, and also rather than preparing like 10 different renders expanded through like multiple different strips, we will usually have to be highly selective, like 2 exterior renders and 2 interior renders that actually show the best spatial quality of our projects, which is why when you see our final presentation and panels, it's not as much as in Malaysia. However, because there's not a huge number of drawings that we're going to present, usually the drawings that we choose to present will be highly critiqued and commented on to improve leading up to the final presentation. It comes with the minute detail of the material selection, the type of grass, the type of native plants that you choose to portray in your renders, in your drawings. Was it actually efficient in showcasing the ideas that you are trying to portray across? So with less drawing, there is actually higher expectation of quality per drawings that you are producing. So the next thing is academic pressure. So how stressful is it studying here, especially studying architecture at the master level? This is purely my own experience. I think that studying architecture in Malaysia is definitely harder and more stressful on my mental health compared to my life as a student in Melbourne. And I think it comes down to 2 different reasons. The first one is the low workload. As I have explained before, the workload for each submission is not as high as the requirement in Malaysia. So although realistically this is still an architecture course, the amount of stay-ups that I have done per semester is not as high compared to seeing my friends who are doing their masters in Malaysia. This is highly amplified with the ability for us to plan our subjects. So in terms of level of difficulty in passing each subject, I don't think I have faced a subject that I think is impossible to pass or impossible to score, but I do know that most of the time I just need to put in the work and time to finish the assignment and the requirement on time. Okay, so another thing about the flexibility of planning your course structure, like if I know beforehand that a certain subject will be more physically demanding or require more time and attention, I will have the flexibility to pair it with a subject that is less intensive and less demanding and take advantage of the summer and winter electives that is offered. And the second thing that I think lead to the low academic pressure is the less sense of comparison between you and your studio mates based on how the tutors handle and comment your work, how the moderation of the batch is being done, and how the crit panels is being organized. Based on my personal experience, I feel less stressed showing up every week to show my progress to the tutors. I would say during my bachelor's in Malaysia, one of the cause of my stress is I never feel like I deserve a rest is peer pressure and the fear of being left behind from my studio mates. And that has always been my drive for staying up just a bit longer and do a bit more or prepare extra models or extra diagrams. So I am used to the final semester of moderation in Malaysia where everyone have to pin up their works according to usually by grade range from A to B plus to B minus to C at the back. And being in that environment, you can really feel the pressure that you need to do well so you are not behind from your peers. Of course, there are times when we feel a bit behind on our studio, so like some of the stuff is unresolved, let's say, but usually our concern is just more on catching up in our design project and not necessarily feel like, oh, I'm feeling stressed because I'm behind from my friends. So that's the difference, I think, in terms of academic pressure that I see here. But I would say at the other side of the coin, due to the lack of appreciation and celebration of student work here, I will say that the sense of payoff and satisfaction at the end of the semester here is much less compared to Malaysia. And I think the last thing that is important to talk about is getting an internship and working while studying. If you came and study here, you will see very common, especially for local student and half of international student, that they will pursue their masters while working part-time. It's because our class are not being handled every single day. Some of us only have 2 classes and half a day per week. So just morning of Monday and evening on Wednesday. And those free time in between the weeks is where students fill it with working an internship or working part-time in architecture firm or working remotely. So one thing that I would like to highlight is for here, bachelor and master, there's not a built-in placement or internship system, especially for UniMelb. I understand that other universities like RMIT actually offers like internship for some of the courses there. So this is different compared to Malaysian system where their part 1 graduates are actually required to have a minimum 6 months to 1 year working experience before they can actually apply for masters in Malaysia. So most of the time everyone will already have like a working experience, and they will usually focus on finishing their masters as a full-time students. And to find people who are working while studying master there is quite rare, and I know that it's going to be very hard on their work-life balance, like balancing study and working. Here, getting a job is actually quite competitive in Melbourne, so there's a lot of competition between local student, international student, and people who are migrating from other countries working in Melbourne. So usually students here will try to get a head start in their career by working part-time and casually along with their masters. So paired with the flexible course planning, flexible hours that you can do, the flexibility that you can extend your master beyond just the 2 years, and the less academic validation that is given to the students, you will commonly see that majority or more than half of your years in your studio is working minimum like 1 day per week to supplement their lifestyle. So one of the biggest reasons that I chose to study abroad was actually to push myself beyond my comfort zone. So not just in my design thinking, but also design process, style, and even the software that I use. I think being in a different education system forces you to see architecture differently. So you start to see that there's no only one way to do architecture and to do design. And I think that is the biggest value of studying overseas. It's not just because overseas university is quote unquote better or like superior from Malaysian university. I don't think that is the right way of thinking if you want to study overseas internationally. It was never in comparing between overseas university are so much better than Malaysia, or like thinking Malaysia is lacking. A lot of the skills that I have learned are majority contributed by my experience studying in UiTM because of the fast-paced culture and how like the competition that I feel trying to get better each semester has actually propelled my skill to be so much further ahead, and I can see that difference when I actually start my master here. So before I end this video, I would like to end it with a question. Out of all the points that I've mentioned in the video, which one do you find the most surprising or you are unaware of? And if you're planning to study architecture in Australia, what are your top pluses on choosing your university, and why are you choosing like a certain university out of the other option that we have available? So like in Sydney or in Melbourne, I would love to know your reasoning. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.